Welcome in, welcome in. Jason Priester, Clemson Insider. 7 o'clock Monday night, like we do every week. Chopping it up, talking some Clemson football or whatever else you want to talk about, as long as it doesn't get too personal. Show where we let the fan drive the conversation. Clemson offense keeps on rolling, man. A lot of questions about how good that App State team was after they got beat down the other night, and legitimate questions. But I also thought what Clemson did against that App State team was impressive. Take the opponent out of it, man. We saw that offense produce at a level never before seen. They scored 8 touchdowns on 8 possessions with the starting quarterback in there, 56 first half points. That kind of stuff's never been done before, not with Watson, not with Lawrence, none of those guys. So it's impressive in and of itself, but they come out against North Carolina State and just keep it rolling. Touchdowns on the first 4 possessions, then scored touchdowns. I think it was on 3 of the next 5 after they finally did punt, and one of those that they didn't score was a field goal. Klubnik's just playing at an unbelievably high level. A QBR of 99 against North Carolina State, QBR of 99 against App State. First time a quarterback has put back-to-back performances together with a QBR of 99 since 2004. And there have been a lot of quarterbacks in the past 20 years play bad teams in back-to-back weeks. So I don't want to hear about it being the competition. Last year, Clemson fans were, hoping and praying they could see this kind of production against bad competition. Now you just got to keep it up. You got to keep it rolling. For me, it starts and stops with that quarterback. I think the offensive line has just been so good. It's allowed him to finally get some confidence in that pass protection. And again, he's stepping up into the pocket and making throws down the field. Guys are running wide open down the field. It's just started to click on all cylinders. And for me, it starts and stops with Klubnik taking that next step. And it just kind of trickles down to everybody else, And it's kind of been, I would have never thought we'd have seen this offense produce at that level in back-to-back games. I thought they could be pretty good, but I was not expecting that. I don't know that a lot of people were. I've said it many times in the offseason. I was kind of in wait-and-see mode on the offense. I had to see it to believe it. And now we've seen it in back-to-back games. Are they going to keep playing to that same level? Probably not. But you could take a little step back, still be pretty damn good. So Stanford up next. Another game where Clemson's big favorites. I think last time I saw it was 20.5. Stanford's got a dude, out there at receiver. I'm not even going to try to say his name. I don't know how to say his name. It's something weird, but just like last week when Clemson needed to make sure they had eyes on Concepcion at all times and not let that guy beat them like he did a year ago. They're going to have to do the same with this guy this week. Yep, a second decommitment. Isaiah Campbell, something that's, based on everything I can gather, has kind of been in the works for a while. I know he just announced it on Saturday, but he had already told the coaches. He was actually in Chapel Hill last weekend. Don't know if he was there this weekend. I saw where he's already set future visits to be back in North Carolina and to Tennessee. I would expect him to set at least 1 or 2 more. And everybody's going to start talking about NIL this, NIL that. And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know that this one's on NIL, and I'm not going to get too deep into the woods here, other than to say that, there's some changes coming in college football whether it's coming in 2025, 2026, we're fixing to see revenue sharing. Teams are going to be able to pay. They're going to have $22 million, or programs are going to have $22 million that they can share annually with players, however they want to share it. You know, at Clemson, supposedly the plan is to have about, you know, if the cap's at 22 million, then they'll use about 15 of that on football, which is, you know, they'll take the percentage of what football draws and use it on football, and that comes out to about 15 million. Now, beyond that, how they plan to use it, nobody knows. I don't know that the recruits know, and if they don't, that's a problem. I do know that other schools are getting way out in front of this thing, man. They're giving players detailed plans on how they, you know, are anticipating going about handling this thing. And I don't know that that's being involved in Clemson's recruiting pitch right now. And that's a problem in my eyes. Something they need to get settled on pretty quick. And otherwise, you might see some more decommitments. I would absolutely not be shocked to see one or two more. Sounds like there's already some fires burning that need to be put out. Well, we'll see what happens. Glad to hear Dabo addressed the murdering of the stats right away by playing so far into D-depth. Frustrating for fans. I saw so many posts mostly on Facebook Saturday evening, Sunday morning, with some fans just moaning and groaning about how many points they gave up in the fourth quarter. And I'm just thinking to myself, did you see who was on the field in the fourth quarter? You know, there was some of them drives where there were multiple guys playing that are probably end up redshirting this year. We're not talking about second string guys. We're talking about fourth string guys, you know, if you want to get right down to it. Guys that are not going to be playing when the game's on the line unless you are just absolutely decimated by injuries. I know at least one of those scoring drives, you had guys like Darian Mayo and Heaven Brown-Schuler both on the defensive line at the same time, and that is a lot of inexperience with North Carolina State still playing a bunch of their starters. I just anything that happened in that fourth quarter, man. When the starters were still in there, I think they allowed 7 points. North Carolina State did very little. They moved the ball a little bit here and there, but I mean that's going to happen, you know. But you know, for me, the bottom line is how many points you give up. I think they gave up 7. So I think Dabo was on to something there. I couldn't believe how many fans I saw moaning and groaning about that Saturday night and Sunday morning. So with the 2 decommits, does Clemson have the eyes on a running back or corner? Neither of the decommits were a running back or a corner, so you have to replace guys you lose. You know, if you lose defensive linemen, you need to replace them with defensive linemen. If you lose a defensive lineman like Isaiah Campbell, you're not going to go replace him with a cornerback. I think Clemson's probably done at corner in this class. I think Clemson's done at running back in this class, barring something unforeseen. You know, technically, they've got 2 already in Davidson and Marquez Henderson from their BHP, although I don't think they're going to use Henderson as a running back. He told me he's definitely planning on starting out on offense, but that might be in the slot. I know that's where they worked him out at camp, you know, a summer ago. So I would say no, they don't have their eyes on a running back or corner at this time. Only concern I have is the depth of the defense. The 3-4 guys, I understand they're learning, but North Carolina State never should have gotten to 35. Again, it's like I just said, you playing a bunch of – heck, some of those guys weren't even third string. You know, you're getting deeper than that. Clemson unofficially played 96 players in that game. That's the most they've ever played against the ACC opponent. I mean, they were just rotating guys in and out. Um, I think Clemson's starting defense is more on a level what you saw in the first half against Georgia, what you saw in the first half against North Carolina State, what you saw in the first quarter against App State. Um, I think that's more of the level that I expect Clemson's defense to play at when all the starters are in the game. Hate to say it, but I wish we would have left our starters in, kind of. But that's just because I hate North Carolina State, possibly more than South Carolina. I'm not a big North Carolina State guy myself, but and we saw Dabo taking time out there late in the first half. I think that was a little bit of kind of turning the knife a little bit while it's in the back. But I don't ever see Dabo embarrassing anybody. And it's always good to get those young guys some reps, and you definitely don't want to see, a guy like Klubnik or Maffa or somebody get hurt when you're up 45 points in the second half. This Vince says, and we've had to deal with bad offense for 4 years. I don't care who we do it against. Just keep up the consistency. That's kind of where my thinking lies. You haven't seen it against. You haven't seen Clemson's offense perform like this against bad competition. Going back to when Trevor Lawrence was here, they didn't do it in 21. They didn't do it in 22. They didn't do it in 23. Not like they've done it the past two games. I think I said this last week, but I remember a year ago, Clemson's offense needing to convert a fourth down or two, start pulling away. I think it was from Charleston Southern early in the year. You're supposed to beat up on bad teams, and that's what they're doing. That's what they've done the past 2 weeks. Chances ACC gets 2 teams into the playoffs. If I'm an ACC team, I would be aiming for that AQ, that automatic qualifier. I would not be sitting there holding my breath to get an at-large bid. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but I think it's going to be a rare occurrence. So if you want to lock up a spot, you better win the ACC. Let's say Miami goes unbeaten, Clemson wins out. Miami beats Clemson in the ACC championship game. That's going to put Clemson at 10-2 with a blowout loss to Georgia and then a loss to Miami. So that would be losses against the 2 best teams they played. I don't know that resume is going to get them in over a 3-loss SEC team or a 3-loss Big Ten team. You can bet your bottom dollar that ESPN is going to want the SEC teams in. The committee's probably going to want teams from the Big Ten and SEC. And I think as we get deeper into this thing, it's probably going to become more of a ACC Big Ten invitational more than anything. But the chances of them getting 2 in, I would put them not very high. I'm not going to say it's impossible because there's always scenarios where it could play out that way, but just look at the rankings right now. How many SEC and Big Ten teams are in the top 12? It is set up in a way to favor the Big Ten and SEC locking up those at-large spots. Matt Luke has made – I'm going to change that and say Matt Luke has made a world of difference. It is a night and day difference. Turn on that North Carolina State game, turn on that App State game, and watch Clemson's offensive linemen get out there and start pulling. And then turn on a game from early last year and watch Clemson's offensive linemen try to get out and pull. It is a distinct difference. I knew Matt Luke was going to have impact on that room. I knew they were going to be improved. I thought they'd be improved by a lot, but they're even more improved than I thought they would be at this point. It's just such an upgrade. Um, and I think that has played a big part in clubbing it, um, kind of the game starting to slow down for him. He's finally starting to fully trust in that pass protection. It allows him to, you know, remain in the pocket a little bit longer. It allows him to step up into that pocket and make some throws. When you got the pass protection and your quarterback fully believes in that protection, it makes a world of difference. Brady said take Clemson and lay the points last week. He was right. I had them not covering. Now he's saying they're not going to cover this week. Come on, man. Be bold again. Very disappointed by the Isaiah Campbell news. Yeah, I'm sure most are. I remember talking to Campbell. It was a day or two after his very first visit to Clemson. I had him on the phone, and we probably talked for 10 or 15 minutes. And I had one of the first things I asked him was to describe, the experience of the visit, or being on campus and being around that program. And he had a hard time putting it into words. He was that geeked up about it, and he finally told me, he said, I can just say it was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I'll never forget it. The guy loved Clemson, absolutely loved it. But until Clemson gets out in front of some of these changes that are coming with this revenue sharing and stuff, I don't know, man. Again, I don't know what the specifics are for how they're going to handle, paying football players, how it's going to be divided up, who gets what or whatever. But if they don't get out in front of this thing and present a, plan and start telling some of these recruits, exactly how it's going to work, you're going to either get on board or you're going to get left behind, because people can moan and groan about players looking to get paid all they want. But we're fixing to enter a era where players are going to get paid part of the revenue they generate. We're not talking about NIL. Every player is going to want to get paid, and rightfully so. And, just say, for example, if Clemson's planning to handle this the same way they do NIL, where a big chunk of the money is used for retention and giving it to the players that earn it, you're going to have a hard time, convincing some of these high school kids to come commit, sign with you. It's something that Clemson's got to get figured out. And if they don't, they're going to lose more guys, period. I know there's been some rumors about Amari Adams, maybe wavering. I've talked to Amari twice in the past month, and he's been pretty upfront when I asked him if teams were, still coming after him hard. And he was pretty upfront about it and said, yeah. But he also at the same time told me that he was, fully locked in. He tweeted out a little bit ago, something showing that he's fully locked in with Clemson, I guess, to kind of quiet down some of these rumors. But, man, there's a long ways to go between now and early signing day. There is a long ways to go. We will see what happens. My opinion for two ACC teams in the playoffs would be both Clemson and Miami go undefeated. We win ACC and they drop to like 10 or so. Assuming undefeated, Miami would be in the top 4 or 5 by the end of the season. I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it if that's just me. I think most years you'll be hard pressed to get 2 ACC teams in. Now, it might work out where you get one in here and there. And possibly this year could be one of those years. We've got to get a little further down the line and see what everybody else is doing first. Here, George is after Adams. They want him back. They're not the only one. They're not the only one that's coming after him hard. Whether it's NIL or not, it's still all about the money. I mean, in the end, yeah, it's going to always be about the money, but this is not NIL. I mean, there are two different things here, man. All these other schools are coming at these kids, man. They've got, or based on what I'm told, they've got detailed plans in place. They're telling these kids how the revenue sharing is going to work and, however they're going to distribute it. It don't sound like Clemson's doing that. Or if they are, the kids aren't liking what they're hearing. One or the other. I would lean towards thinking it's the former, not the latter. It's hard to get anybody to talk about it up there. It doesn't sound like they've got all the details worked out on what they're planning to do. Now, that's just me kind of reading between the lines on some things I've heard. So I don't know that to be fact. But when we get to this revenue sharing thing, we're basically talking about players making salaries. They're all going to be making some type of salary. And if Clemson can't tell these guys what they're going to be getting, and all these other schools are being able to tell them what they're going to be getting, and some schools say, hey, man, you can get twice as much here. That's a problem. That's a problem to me. That's different than getting outbid NIL. The NIL money, it has to come through donations. You can't control what people donate. The revenue sharing, you are allowed to spend so much. So you got that every year that you can pay your players with. I don't know. I see them in two different lights. And like it or not, it's fixing to start always being about the money. That's going to be one of the top two reasons players go here or go there or go somewhere else. It's fixing to become professionalized, so to speak. Clemson out of the conversation of Campbell since he decommitted. I know that somebody told me his dad has said in an interview somewhere that Clemson was still in it, but nah, they're not. Think about Miami so far and the chances it's Miami versus Clemson in the championship. I think the chances of it being Miami and Clemson in the championship are pretty high at this point. They look by far like the two best teams in the ACC. I got to watch Miami some Saturday night, and that offense is good. I'm not sure how good their defense is yet. I just want to see them play against some better competition. But I think it would be a good matchup. They're two teams with offenses that are playing at a very high level. Both quarterbacks playing at a very high level. Both teams with playmakers on offense. I don't know enough about Miami's defense yet. So basically, teams are just swooping in and offering commits money. That's how it works now. I mean, this revenue sharing is going to start as early as next year. These are guys in the 2025 class who are going to be on teams next year. They absolutely need to know how it's going to work, what they're going to make, those kind of things. So, yeah, absolutely 100%. Money's being talked about in pretty much all these recruitments. Committed guys or not, it don't matter. Just because a guy's committed, that doesn't mean the school is going to stop recruiting him. Clemson recruits kids that are committed. They might not offer you until you decommit, but they recruit you while you're committed. It absolutely gets talked about, and the offers are out there 100%, as it should be. Used to love recruiting. I absolutely hate it now. Oh, it's different. It's different. It's used to be guys would play for the name on the uniform. It's not that way anymore, man. It's just, and it's not going to be. The NCAA screwed this up so badly. They refuse to give an inch. If you would have just given an inch 10 years ago while you're making billions and billions and billions, we could have avoided all of this mess, man. Just started paying the players a little bit of money. They're the ones generating it. I know a lot of college football fans don't like that idea, but this is a year-round job for these guys, man. They can't go out and get jobs and make money. The stipends they get are a joke. They need to be paid. They're the ones making the money for these schools. They absolutely need a piece of the pie. And if the NCAA would have, given in a little and made that happen a decade ago, we could have avoided all this. Florida State is live right now with their coach saying they are going to destroy us. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I'd be surprised if Mike Norvell's out there saying he's going to destroy anybody right now. Any change in your view on Jordan Young, or might that come down to another school? Probably. I can't hardly get a good read on Jordan Young. Outside of telling me he was visiting Clemson this weekend, I can't really get him to talk to me. Once some of these guys, once they reach a national level, they don't want to talk to the local guys anymore. But I talked to somebody about Jordan Saturday, and this was during the game. And I've heard since from somebody else that the visit went as well as can be expected. But I was told Saturday that North Carolina State might not be the lock that everybody thinks they are. So we'll see. He'll probably commit sometime next month, would be my guess. He's been for a long time. He talked about up to October the 12th, and then it started talking about pushing it back a little bit. But I would say I feel a little bit better now than I did at this time last week. Chance Isaiah Campbell, Bryce Davis may commit back to Clemson. No. Bryce Davis's deal was a little bit different. I'm not saying money wasn't involved. It absolutely was. But, you also had, parents that preferred him at Duke and getting that Duke degree. And that is a little bit different. But, no, neither one of those guys are coming back. Tyler Brown, he was dressed Saturday when they first came out for pregame. The ankle was, taped pretty heavily. Well, I shouldn't say he was dressed in uniform, because when they first come out, none of them are in uniform, but he was dressed like everybody else was with that ankle taped heavily. He doesn't look like he's far off. Concern is how quickly the linebacker group gets inexperienced and mistake prone. There's not a lot of experience behind the starters. And you're not going to see Sammy Brown and D. Creighton playing a bunch of snaps when the game's on the line. It's going to be Woodaz and Carter, at least for now. I thought Sammy Brown was much better Saturday than he was against App State 2 weeks ago. Just looks like the game's still a little fast for him at times. But you're only in trouble, really, if one of those guys gets hurt, Barrett Carter or Woodaz. Because, there's a lot of inexperience behind them. Some of the players are in the game late were walk-ons. Yeah, there were some walk-ons in the game in that fourth quarter, too. Glad the invisibility cloak was taken off Stellato. Yeah, he saw him one time finally running downfield. I was glad to see that, too. right about FSU. That makes me 50-50 then, because I was wrong about them last year. I wasn't buying them last year going into the season. But yeah, I definitely wasn't buying them this year with DJ at quarterback. I said it all season. All off season, I fully believe DJ is who he is at this point. And I think Mike Norvell's a good coach, but there ain't no coach out there that good. Toughest team on our schedule. Who is the toughest team on our schedule with the way we are playing now? Kind of think we will win out. When you look at that schedule, it's not nearly as daunting as it looked in the preseason. You look at those first 5 games, and you got Georgia and App State, North Carolina State, and Florida State. That's 4 of your first 5 games with Stanford in there too. Obviously Georgia's pretty good. App State, not nearly as good as expected. North Carolina State, not nearly as good as expected. Florida State, not nearly as good as expected. Stanford, probably a little bit better than expected, but not that good. So the schedule is much less daunting. But there's a stretch there. You got Louisville, who looks pretty good, but they come to Clemson. That stretch in November, you got 5 games in 5 weeks after that bye in late October. Louisville at home. Then you go on the road to Virginia Tech, to Pitt. Those are going to be, you got back-to-back road games up north in November. Those are not going to be easy. Outside of the Louisville game, which is the obvious one, Pittsburgh and Vatech, and I say Vatech just because it's on the road, in Blacksburg, they're another team that's not as good as people thought they were going to be this year. If I had to pick one on the schedule that's left, I'd say Pitt, because it's on the road. I wouldn't underestimate South Carolina either. I think they're better than people thought they were going to be this year too. Moffa looked really uncomfortable when he left hurt. I was surprised he came back in. He was fine after the game. We got to talk to him after the game. He was moving around fine. He said everything was fine. I couldn't really tell what happened to him. I just kind of assumed he got a Charlie horse or something. He ended up staying in the tent for a few minutes, but when he came out, he was good to go. And he came back in and had some carries after that, ended up going over 100 yards. Do you believe this is the real Cade or a reflection on the opposition? I think that this is the Cade that I thought Clemson was going to get when they signed him. Anybody that's watched me talk the last couple of years, last 3 years, or read my writing, I have always been high on Clemson. This is the Cade that I saw on film at Westlake. I've said it a couple of times on here. If you've not watched any of Cade's high school stuff, go watch him in that state title game, and Saren can tell you the name of the opponent. I always forget. But Quinn Ewers was the quarterback. This is that Cade. Scanning the whole field, just extremely accurate, making smart decisions, not making mistakes, not turning the ball over. This is the Cade that I thought Clemson was getting when they signed him. It just took longer to get there than I thought it would. Now, is he going to continue to post quarterback ratings of 99 week after week after week? No. There's still probably going to be some up and down. But I expect moving forward there's going to be so much more good than there is bad. I keep going back to something Antonio Williams said last week. I think it was Wednesday, maybe. I forget what day it was, Tuesday or Wednesday. It was like all of a sudden in that App State game, the guys on that offense, they saw what it looked like. And once they saw what it looked like, they knew they could do it. And that just it just kind of created a snowball effect, and that snowball is still rolling. So yeah, I kind of think this is more of who Cade is than a reflection on the opposition. Yeah, we touched on Campbell at the top. He told the coaches before Saturday. I know that's when he went public Saturday. He was actually in Chapel Hill last weekend. I have no idea if he was there this weekend or not. I know some people said he was supposed to be. I don't know if he did go or not. Um, he has now set future visits back to North Carolina, one to Tennessee. Um, as far as what happened, it's just I would just say go back and watch the top of the show. There's a lot of things. College football is rapidly changing, man. We're fixing to usher in an era where there's going to be revenue sharing, and I think that's something Clemson's got to get on top of in a hurry, or we might start to see some more decommitments in this class. I think there's some other fires that are burning that need to be put out. But yeah, I spent a few minutes talking about that. If you can, I don't want to dive back too deep into the weeds there, say more than I should, but check it out at the top. Don't think style points matter anymore. It will all be driven by eyeballs, and the more SEC and Big Ten teams, the better the viewership, money, bottom line. Yeah, I lean towards thinking this. If you've got an ACC team that's 10-2 looking to get in, and it's an SEC team that's 9-3 looking to get in, 9 times out of 10, that SEC team is probably going to get the bid. Substitute that with a Big Ten team, they're probably going to get it. It's just the era we live in. The Big Ten and the SEC have all the power right now. And I'm not saying that as far as who gets into playoff necessarily, because I'm just talking about when it comes to the power structure in college football. And I think the playoff will most years reflect that. Does Stanford have a good run defense, or does Syracuse not have a good run defense? I've only watched Syracuse play once. That was a couple weeks ago. I have not watched Stanford at all, and I have not really dove deep into them at all. I'll do that middle of the week. So I can't really tell you about their run defense. I can look it up right quick here for you and tell you what the stats say. Sometimes the stats this early in the season don't always tell the tale. Let's see, rushing wise. Stanford's averaging 137.7 yards per game and 4.1 yards per carry. Their running back, Ashton Daniels, he's averaging 4.2 yards per carry, 39 carries, 217 yards. He's also got a net loss. He's been tackled for loss worth of 54 yards this year too. Longest run, 31. He averages 54 yards a game. Chris Davis averages 66 yards per game, but he's only got 15 carries. Looks like they've only got 2 rushing touchdowns all season long. Let's see here what Stanford's run defense is. Stanford is only allowing 51.7 rushing yards a game, 2.2 yards attempt. That's pretty good. 155 carries against them, just 232 yards. Now, that might be a reflection of who they've played. Well, they played TCU, Cal Poly, Syracuse. Cal Poly's not very good. We're not even going to look that one up. Let's see here. TCU ran for over, no, wait a minute. TCU, yep, they ran for over 100 yards on them. 34 attempts, 3-point yards, 3.1 yards per carry. So that's about all I can tell you about Stanford's deep run defense and offense so far. The difference Luke has made already is awesome. Just wait for years to come. Yeah, I figured the biggest, jump would come between year 1 and 2. But, man, they're playing at such a high level right now. It's hard to see them taking that much of a, that big of a jump now between year 1 and 2. Man, the impact he has had on that room it can't be overstated. And you talk to some of these offensive line recruits in this 2026 class, and they love him, man. They just absolutely love him. Still don't think Cade is comfortable in the pocket. I would just have to agree to disagree on that one. "2025 recruiting class shrinking and shrinking. Huge class in 26. So finally we use the portal. 110 scholarships available next year." I don't know that it's going to be 110 next year. That's not set in stone yet. The House settlement has kind of hit a couple of bumps in the road there. It might not be finalized as early as they thought, so it might be 2026 before we see the rosters expanded. But let's just say in theory they're expanded before next year. And Clemson, let's say Clemson, they're expanded before next year and you lose another guy or two. It'll probably depend on what kind of off-season attrition you have, because they're not looking at losing a ton of guys that, from this year's team. They're not going to be out of eligibility anyways. It'll just depend on how many guys are looking to transfer out, looking for a fresh start. But it could definitely force Dabo's hand into the portal. It just depends. But, to answer your question, I would expect a very big class in 2026 if the rosters don't expand to 2026. JP got a shout out on the Roar this morning. I heard they were talking about me on the Roar on the radio. Facts and was. Stanford looked pretty good in a hostile environment. At Syracuse, we need to play well. I'll tell you another thing to keep in mind about this Stanford team. They're fixing to make back-to-back cross-country trips. At some point, that's going to have an impact because they did not stay on the East Coast. They flew back to California. Flying on a plane for a couple hours takes it out of me. Doing it, 4 times in 2 weeks in cross country, that starts to wear on you. But there's a reason Clemson's almost a 3-touchdown favorite in this game. But at the same time, they've got some guys, man. I mentioned that receiver they've got already. He can beat you. That guy can beat you. He can take over a game and he can beat you. So, I mean, it's absolutely somebody you cannot overlook. Kind of worried about our lack of sacks thus far. Season prior, we were animals in the backfield, getting 4 sacks a game. We only have 4 sacks this entire season. Yeah, they've only got 4 sacks, but when the starters have been in, the front four has been extremely disruptive. The quarterback does not have nearly the amount of time in the pocket that a quarterback does on average when they've played Clemson this year. It's like half a second difference. Even though they're not getting the sacks, they are greatly affecting the quarterback, and that's what it's all about. Do you see this team in the 12? I've said all along, I think this Clemson team's got the potential to make the playoff. I still do. Now, I don't know what they'll do once if they get in. I don't know what they'll do then, but yeah, I think they absolutely can win the ACC and get in. With Isaiah and Bryce decommitting, do we go after edge? They've already offered him the defensive tackle. Another one Saturday. The Ingram kid. Got him on the phone for a little while yesterday. I think Clemson's probably in a good spot with him. You look at his recruiting ranking, man, he's ranked very low. But you start digging into it a little bit, and you see Alabama's offered him, Georgia's offered him just in like the last 2 weeks, and one of the other big schools is offering him too. I forget who it was. And I think suddenly he's a 4-star on Rivals now that he's picked up those offers here in the last couple of weeks. But I think Clemson made a big move with him over the weekend, just based off the conversation I had with him yesterday. If you want to see the interview, it's up on the site. Will players eventually be on a contract basis? Yeah, I think it eventually gets to that, yeah. I'm holding out hope that there are still families with old-fashioned values who still believe in hard work and growth and skill building instead of the money. Well, if those are the only candidates Clemson looks for, they're going to be left in the dust because they're all going to be, eligible to make money from this revenue share, man. Just because a kid wants to be paid, that doesn't mean he doesn't have the old-fashioned values and believe in hard work. He wants to be compensated for that hard work and for helping to generate the tens and tens of millions of dollars for these schools year in and year out. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like I said earlier, if the NCAA would have given a little bit on this a decade ago, we wouldn't be here. Also, like I said a little bit ago, I tend to see the NIL and the revenue sharing thing and kind of two different things. Yeah, at the end of the day, both of them are about money. But over here, you're not asking the fans to donate. You're not limited in what you can bring in. Over here, you got, with the revenue sharing, you got a set amount that you're going to be able to pay these guys year in and year out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with these guys wanting to know what that's going to be. It's a revenue shared, undecided for basketball. See, I can't answer that. I can't even tell you for sure it's undecided for football. If it's decided, it's just not being portrayed very well. I tend to think it's probably not getting talked about a whole lot in detail. That's just an opinion based on some things I've heard. Clemson actually got 2 baseball commitments today, 2 pretty big ones. A guy that one of them is a 10 on perfect game, the other one's a 9. Package is killing it. There's one kid, I'm not going to mention him by name, had his scholarship offer yanked a couple months ago. If you count the players on Clemson's roster last year, it was over 40. And if these roster limits are put in place ahead of next season, which is probably not going to happen, it'll probably be 2026 for baseball. You're not going to be able to have that many, so you had to lose some spots. But you see this one kid who's no longer committed. He had his offer yanked, and then you replace him with two talents like that. I mean, two big time talents. So other schools are selling pie in the sky. No, I don't think they're selling pie in the sky. I mean, this is coming, man, whether people want to believe it or not. I understand that there's been a bump or two in the road with the house settlement, and it might not get here as quickly as many of us assumed it would. It's still coming. Revenue sharing is going to happen. That's not pie in the sky. You got all these schools coming at these kids with these detailed plans in place, telling them exactly how they're going to handle it, exactly how much is going to go to them. It's going to go here, 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 here. And I think you got one school over here that's not doing that. So I don't think that's pie in the sky at all. I think that's these schools getting out in front of this thing. And it's kind of shocking that, well, on one hand, it's a little surprising to me that Clemson's not out in front of it because they're typically out in front of things. But then on the other hand, in some areas, Clemson was out in front with NIL, the building over there, the facility they built for it and those kind of things. But I don't know that they've been out in front in a lot of areas with NIL. I think there's a lot of things they could have done better. And it sounds like the same way with this revenue share. I mean, it's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. So I definitely wouldn't call it pie in the sky. Louisville gets their first Big Test Saturday. If they beat Notre Dame, we still have to beat Miami and Clemson to make it to Charlotte. Yeah, I would probably have Miami and Clemson as the favorites to make it to Charlotte right now. And I don't, we'll see if Louisville can get by the Irish. What point do fans start to recalculate the expectations of the Clemson program if we become fully engulfed in this bidding business? Every team's going to have the same amount of money they can use in revenue sharing. It's going to be capped. So it's not like Alabama can throw $100 million at their team and Clemson's only got 20. Miami defense leads the nation in sacks and third down defense, all without Bain, who is currently hurt. And Miami's played Florida, Florida A&M, Ball State, and South Florida. They've only played one Power 5 team, and that Power 5 team it does not even have a pulse. That's why I say I want to see more from the defense. Nobody's going to be able to tell you how much money was thrown out to Bryce Davis. And it's just not something that gets talked about a lot. And money wasn't the only factor here. I talked about that earlier. You got mom and dad who wanted him at Duke and getting that degree and close to home. So all that factored in. The Davis thing was a little bit different with the Campbell. So why is it Clemson aligned in the revenue sharing? 2 years ago, Clemson was at the front of NIL programs, NIL Media Center, and South Carolina legislation. Why are we twiddling thumbs now? See, I would argue that there were some areas where Clemson's not been out in front with the NIL stuff. Again, I think there's some things where they did it well, like the NIL Institute. It was the first of its kind in the country. But I also don't think Clemson's messaging for at least around football for NIL has been very good. I don't think there has been enough put on how important it is to compete in this era. I mean, it took forever for Dabo to even, start talking about the collectives. So, yeah, they did some good things, but I think there were some other areas where they could have been better. And the second part of, why aren't they aligned in the revenue share? I don't, I can't answer that, man. I just think it's something they got to get figured out and get figured out in a hurry. Maybe they're waiting on it to become official. But I know nobody else is. Nobody else is waiting on it to become official before they start addressing it. Zaire Patterson's hurt. Is the storm going to affect the game Saturday? That storm's moving fast, and I'm not a big weather guy. I don't follow weather much. I did look at the forecast earlier today, and the forecast had it coming through the upstate sometime early on Friday. But the day's Monday, and we all know how things can change with a hurricane or a tropical storm. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that. One second, I got to answer this text. I got to hurry up and jump off. I can't run over today. I don't have the exact date from when baseball fall practice starts. From my understanding, there are not going to be any exhibitions at home outside of the, orange and purple scrimmages. Who makes the revenue share allocation decision? Does it start with Nev setting the framework? I imagine that's something the framework's kind of already been set. They got an idea of what they're going to do there. The percentage of revenue football generates, that's the percentage of the money that's going to go to football. Now they're thinking the cap's going to be somewhere around 22, 23, 24 million. That would put what football gets around 15 million annually. So that much, we already know. It's the details below that nobody knows how it's going to get distributed, to how much to each player. Are you planning to give each guy an even amount or what? Or is it going to be performance? Is it going to be incentivized based on performance or seniority? Or there's a lot of questions we don't know the answers to. Any positive results from this weekend? Any recruits? I think Clemson made a move with Donovan Murph. Talked to him for a little while last night, and he flat out told me the last 2 weeks that what he's seen from Clemson's offense has totally changed his perception of Clemson. So I think they made a move with Murph. So I think they've always been in pretty good shape with him anyways, but I think they really I think that really had a profound impact on him. He's a long way from deciding, though. The Ingram kid is the one I would say, the Ingram and Young were the two 2025 guys that were there, defensive tackle and the safety. And I think Clemson helped themselves with both, probably Ingram more so than anybody. And he would be the guy that replaces Campbell in this class. This right here, recruiting is now nothing more than a business transaction. For a lot of guys, it has been over the last few years, but once this revenue sharing kicks in, that's absolutely going to be like that for pretty much everybody. And the sooner that gets embraced, the better. All right. I got an interview I got to do at 8, so I got to jump off. Fixing to talk to big-time offensive lineman Adam Guthrie, who was there this weekend. Look for that interview up on the site in the next day or two. Appreciate everybody that tuned in here today. Don't forget, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll be right back here next week.